I'm going to tell you an Armenian folk tale. Armenian tales typically begin and end with the same phrases. Perhaps you can listen for them. The name of the story is The Gift of Gold. In the ancient Armenian city of Van, there lived an old man and an old woman. They were a couple. They lived in a one-room stone cottage that was in disrepair. For a living, they carried water for other people. This didn't make for much, but it was enough. They were contented and happy with their place in the world. The king of Van was a very rich and very powerful man. He taxed the citizens of the city heavily, and there was a great deal of tension between the palace and the city, such that he worried constantly about the security of his fortune and also about his personal safety. Sometimes in the evenings, the king and his vizier, whom we would call an advisor, would go into the city in disguise, eavesdropping on conversations that they could pick up from the citizens, trying to understand whether there were intrigues or there were plans that they needed to know about. One evening in particular, they visited the poorest section of the city. All the lights were out. There were no people about. The people in that section of the city rose and went to sleep with the sun. At the end of a long alley, they heard clapping and singing coming from a small stone cottage. They heard an old man clapping and singing, and some scuffling that they thought might be dancing. And then they heard an old woman singing and clapping and what they thought might be dancing. The king whispered, "These people sound very happy." The vizier said, "Well, perhaps it is a special occasion. Even in a poor person's life, there is at least one time to celebrate." "Possibly," said the king, "but there is a secret here that I must learn about." Curiosity brought them back the next evening. It was the same. The old man and the old woman were clapping and singing, and what the vizier and the king thought were dancing. The king said, "Let us pretend to be travelers." And so they went to the front door and knocked. Now, at this time in Armenia, if a traveler came to your door, everyone was honor bound to let them in, give them a place to rest, perhaps something to eat and drink. Everyone kept this rule, this honor. Everyone was honor bound to keep this rule. The old woman said, "Who is it?" The vizier said, "We are travelers. We would like to find a place to rest." She said, "Just a moment." There was a slight pause. And then she opened the door. "Welcome, come in, come in. We have very little, but you are welcome to some water. We have nothing to eat." The vizier and the king, on entry into the room, saw that there were no pictures, there was no furniture, there was only a wooden bed, rope bed with straw piled on it, and two indentations at one end where pillows might have been. She said, "Please sit here on these stones. We use them as pillows, but you may sit on them." The king and the vizier sat, and the vizier said, "Pardon me, sister, we couldn't help it hearing, but are you alone?" She said, "Oh no, my husband is here." "Well, where is he?" said the vizier. "Oh, he's hiding behind the wall." You see, there was a hearth where they cooked with a short wall jutting out and separated it from a single room in the cottage. "Well, go and get him," said the vizier. And so she went behind the wall. The vizier and the king heard some whispering and movement, and out came the husband. The vizier said, "Well, where is your wife?" And he said, "She is hiding behind the wall. You see, we have only one shirt, this one made of rags and mostly patches. We could only wear it one at a time. I see, said the visor. Well, it sounded like you were happy. We could hear outside the wall that you were singing and clapping and what we thought was dancing. You seemed very happy. And the old man said, yes, we are contented with our place in the world and with each other. The visor said, would you mind us reporting your happiness to the king? And then the king spoke up and said, yes, if you were reported to the king and he invited you to the castle, would you accept? The old man said, yes, we are subjects of the king and we would obey. There was some small talk and the travelers left. The king muttered to the visor on the way back to the castle that he wanted to do an experiment to see if these poor people, if he gave them rich clothing and gold, if that would make them even happier than they were. The next day, the old couple received an invitation. They had to decide who was going to accept the invitation to go to the palace. They played rock, scissors, and paper. The old man lost, so he had to go. In the presence of the king, the old man bowed, and the king said, I understand you are very happy, and I wish to give you gifts of rich and beautiful clothing and gold, several sacks of gold. The old man thanked the king, and it took the items home. That evening, the old man and the old woman put on their rich clothing, and the old man said, now you dance, and I will clap and sing. And he began to clap and sing, and the old woman began to dance, and then she stopped. And he said, what's wrong? And she said, these clothes are so heavy. I can't move quickly enough. They stop me from dancing. Let me try, said the old man. So the old woman sang and clapped, and he danced, and like her, he stopped. He said, you're right, this clothing is too awkward to dance in. And so they both sat down. And when she did, the old woman spied the gold over in a corner, and she said, we have to hide that. Someone will break in, will steal our gold. They thought long and hard through the evening. And just before they went to bed, they decided they would put it in a crack in the wall and cover it up with stones. But they were worried that someone would come in and steal their gold. They continued worrying. In fact, they never danced because of their clothing. And they were concerned all the time about someone breaking into their house. The king and the visor made a visit again several weeks later. They came to the house and knocked on the door. There was no answer. The visor knocked again. The old woman who had whispered to the old man, it's probably thieves, don't answer the door. But the second knock prompted her to say, well, who is it? The visor said, we are travelers, we would like to take a rest. And she said, we have nothing for you. Go into the city and there's a well there that you can get a fresh drink of water. We have nothing for you. Go away. The visor said, we are the visor and the king. We have come to see what you have done with the gifts. And she said to the old man, it's got to be a thief. No king would come at this time of the night. Not a king. A king wouldn't come to this section of town. Can't be true. At that moment, the king spoke up and said, old man, you recognize my voice. The old man said, yes, it is the king. And he let them in. When they came in, they saw that there was no change in the house. There were no pictures. There was no new furniture. Everything was as it was when they first visited the small cottage. The king said, why have you not spent any of your money? Or what has happened? And the old man said, Well, we can't buy anything because if we do, it will show that we have all this money and people will just come in and steal it and steal the money as well, steal our gold. The king, at that moment, realized that he had made a once happy couple into an unhappy couple. He thought, well, I wonder if you would give back the gifts that I gave you, if that would make a difference. He felt badly. They both unanimously, at the same time, said, please take back the gold in these clothes. And so the king and the vizier returned to the castle with the gifts. It took about a week for the couple to regain the level of happiness that they had before this whole incident started. And when they did, they sent an invitation to the palace. The invitation asked the king and the queen to come in disguise in the evening when the old man and the old woman danced, so that they could teach the king and the queen how they might dance and clap and sing. And they did. There were 4 people dancing and singing in the small cottage. And the king, when the evening was over and he left, he would slide a small gold coin under the flower pot at the front door. This dancing and singing in the evenings had a profound effect on the king. He determined that he would change the way he was acting toward the people. He didn't lower their taxes, but he did build schools and hospitals and improve the roads and use the high taxes for the benefit of the people. And he did feel happier as a result. And in the evenings, he and the queen would sing and dance and clap. 3 apples fell from the sky, 1 for the listener, 1 for the teller, and 1 for the people of the world.